Sculpt yourself. I am no longer hating how I look. I've come so far. This is the answer I've waited for all of my life. Oh, sculpt yourself. Let me see who you are. Okay, I could not resist, because as soon as the title of this book and that song both came into my head at the same time, I knew that had to happen. I apologize, but not that much. So, Sculpt Yourself. Yes, I finally did manage to make my way through another indie book. I have a hard time doing it because I don't have a lot of time to actually sit down and read, but I was able to get an audiobook version of this, so that was very exciting. Hey guys, this is the world's fastest reminder that you can support me on Patreon and see all kinds of exclusive videos like these ones. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. Sculpt Yourself is by a fellow author-tuber named Savvy, who I greatly appreciate and whom I've actually gotten to meet, which is very exciting because I very, very seldom get to meet my fellow author-tubers because most of them live quite far away. I'm just I feel like I'm just here in the Midwest all by myself, hello? Anyone else? No? Okay. So, of course, I was nervous going into reading an author-tuber's book, especially one that I appreciate and respect as much as I do Savvy, because, you always worry, what if I don't like it?
Good news, everyone!
I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. So, what is this book about? This story stars three women, young women. I've written them down: Amber, Kelly, and Judy. Two of them are sisters and I can't remember which. That's a me thing. I struggle with characters and remembering who they are when I'm as soon as I finish reading the book, I forget who everyone is. And I could look it up, but my laptop's all the way in the other room and I would have to move the camera, and you know what, that's not happening. Three main girls, and they're all living in our modern times, except there's one big difference. A new product has just come on the market called Lipomorph, which allows you to rearrange the fat in your body to look however you please. I don't know if I'd call it literary fiction. There isn't really a very strong plot in that. It's similar to literary fiction in that way. And it's about these girls just dealing in their lives with Lipomorph and their different thoughts about it, and society, and expectations for women, and all of that good stuff. Because, we live in a society. So let's just get into my notes. I kind of took notes as I was reading, and they're a little all over the place, and at one point I was away from my notebook, so I just started writing on random pieces of paper. But let's go. I have a lot of notes. Right away, I like the discussion of beauty standards for women and the exploration of not only society making women want to dress, act, look a certain way, but also when we want to do it for ourselves. Because there's always this notion that if a woman ever dresses up pretty, it's for everyone else, when in reality she might just be doing it for herself. And this book does discuss that intersection and when and where and why women choose to do these things. It is interesting, and there are a few little holes like this where I feel like a book that's such a message book and exploring so many things maybe missed out on a few opportunities to explore other things. Amber, who's one of the sisters, I believe Judy is the other sister? I could be wrong, I'm sorry. Amber chastises her sister for wanting to look attractive to men, but the book doesn't exactly interrogate at all what Amber finds attractive, because Amber is attracted to women. She's a lesbian. We never really find out what she finds attractive physically, and I would be very interested to learn more about that and how Amber's attraction meets, the male gaze, and where is that intersection, all that wibbly wobbly stuff. And it might have been in there a very little bit that I missed, but I didn't think it really was explored. And I think it would have been really interesting to explore women who try to look attractive for other women, and when Amber might scoff at a woman wanting to look attractive for a man, but might not scoff at a woman wanting to look attractive for her. Amber's a difficult character, and if you are not on board for difficult characters, this book might frustrate you. She is one of those people who kind of has to nitpick everything, has to find the flaws in everything. Nothing is without her criticism or critique, which, let's be honest, she's basically me. And I find myself slightly abrasive. Like, if I met myself in real life, I would probably dislike myself. And I have that problem with Amber. She's too much like me, and I'm just like, would you find joy in something once, woman? On the other hand, though, I don't hate it to read, because even though she's a very frustrating character, I'm usually on board for frustrating characters as long as they feel like real people, and because Amber is basically me, she felt pretty real. There was very little discussion as well in this book of men using lipomorph, and I wish there had been more, because this book definitely is dealing with the women's issue of our bodies and how media has told us we need to be, and it's not really interested in interrogating the world of like beauty standards for men and toxic masculinity and how that affects men. And I understand that this book just isn't really signed up for that. But I do find it highly, highly, highly suspect that lipomorph would not be advertised to men at all, nor would men seem to want to use it at all. I really don't think that that would be the case. It might be advertised more towards women, but when there's money to be made, I think it would definitely also be advertised towards men, and men would be using it. This book is also very millennial/Gen Z focused. The only sort of older perspective that we get is a full-on Karen who just doesn't get it. She's basically there to be like the one that doesn't get it. And I wish that we had gotten more scope of women as far as ages go, because I think that would have been really interesting to have. This book definitely gave off the message of we stan women, but really only younger ones. And I know there are a lot of Karens out there, but we can also get the perspective of, you know, boomers like my mother, who does not act like a Karen. I'm gonna be real, my favorite character was Judy, the younger sister. She is the one who uses the lipomorph. She has a lot of insecurities about her body. She does a lot to try to get the attention of men. I liked her a lot because she was very relatable in that way. Even though I don't have a ton of body issues myself, I really could understand where she was coming from. This book did make me wonder if I really even could use lipomorph. Much like the main character, who is basically a very stick-thin person, I don't have a lot of fat to rearrange on my body. Like, maybe I could take a little bit off of my thighs, which are somewhat impressive, and put them up to my chest, but like, if you are a very skinny person, you can't really use lipomorph, and that's something else interesting that we could potentially discuss maybe in a later book. Maybe that's going to be discussed soon. You can't really sculpt yourself if you're too thin. I'm onto my notes on the random pages now, guys. I will say that this book was very readable, like so easy to fly through. The way it is written is very conversational. I listened to it in like 2 sittings, and the first time when I had to stop, I was already looking forward to the next work day when I could finish it. However, some might find it a little bit too heavy-handed in its messages, and there were definitely times where I was in that camp. It's definitely a message book, and sometimes it just does not believe in subtlety at all. And you know that I personally prefer if a book gives me things to explore and think about and doesn't spoon-feed me too much. I didn't love how heavy-handed it could be at times. We are sort of pushed to think that maybe Amber's view is the correct one, but it's only a maybe because there are lots of other angles to consider, and this book does leave it with no easy answer, which of course, if lipomorph were a real thing in real life, there would not be an easy answer about whether it was good or bad. I didn't love that Amber was a bit of a stereotype lesbian who hates men. I just didn't love that. That's all I have to say about that. One of the other reasons I think we fall into maybe believing that Amber's point of view is the correct one is that she has the strongest character of the 3 women that we follow. It kind of goes Amber, her sister, and then the other girl who does end up as a romantic interest for Amber. She's the weakest, I feel like. Amber comes up with most of the ideas. Amber is the driving force if anything is going to happen in the plot most of the time. Other people do come up with ideas, but usually Amber is such a force that I feel like the other characters drown a little bit in her shadow. Now this is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want that, I'll put River's song up on the screen, and when she goes away, I'll come back. I will have other things to discuss after she's gone, so it's not just going to be the outro. So, alright, are you ready? And spoiler time. The big thing that happens in this book is that a few people OD on lipomorph, and people are not as stressed out as I feel like they would be in real life. People would be freaking the fuck out. I mean, just think about all of the hullabaloo that happened over that vaping situation where a few people died, and I don't really know too many details about that, but everyone was freaking out. So imagine if some people OD'd on Lipomorph, how much people would freak the fuck out. Especially since in this world it's not really explained whether Lipomorph was clinically tested at all. I keep switching back and forth on how I pronounce it. So I don't think that it would just be brushed under like, oh, just don't OD on it and you'll be fine. This does bring up the thought, though, of fake lipomorph, and could people create fake stuff that does kill you and, you know, black market lipomorph? And it made me very curious for that, and maybe that'll come up in a future book. Alright, spoiler time is over. Let's get back to it. This book did cover body dysmorphia a little bit, where you look in the mirror and what you see is not the truth, but I kind of wish that it had covered it a little bit more. There's a lot of women wanting to change the way they look, but not specifically body dysmorphia, and I do wish that it had been covered just a little bit more personally if I, you know, had my druthers. I would also be interested if this was more of a hard sci-fi book. It is such a soft sci-fi book, like, Lipomorph just exists, please don't ask questions about it, but it would be really interesting to think about the regulations to do with Lipomorph and how it was tested, and was it clinically tested? It doesn't seem like it was. This book is mostly supposed to be about women's issues, but you have created this thing that would be in the real world very, very discussed, and wouldn't just be like, here's an advertisement on TV, get this new product, I don't feel like. Now again, the heavy-handedness might be on purpose, because of course in the world we live in now, women are often ignored, their pain is often ignored, their medical issues are often less well treated because they're women. Like, you go in for pain and you're just told it's your period when it could be something much more serious.
Now, before you call me out, yes, I know that some men have periods too, but this book really only explores the experience of cis women. Now, I would love if future books, I'd be really interested, Savvy, if you're watching this, in lipomorph, and how it affects the trans women of the world and how they are using it and dealing with it. That would be super interesting to explore if you felt like you could do that. Not saying you have to, just something to consider.
But I do feel that to keep the realism of this world, we might need to have Lipomorph treated a little more seriously. I was watching another review of this book, and someone did mention that the sexism in the workplace issue comes the fuck out of nowhere near the end, and yeah, I agree. We have seen zero sexism in the workplace until suddenly at the end they're like, oh yeah, that exists and that's bad too. And I'm like, oh. And while I find some of these issues to be a bit overdone or overwrought or just too obvious, a younger reader than me might go into this book and find it a real breath of fresh air. I do recommend it especially for 20-somethings who are really looking for a very readable feminist book. So I know I had a lot of critiques for this book, but I really did enjoy my time with it, and I'm interested to see what happens with the sequel. One thing I will say about this book is that it stands up. I could see this book on regular shelves because, you know, indie books have such a stigma of being not as good, not as well written, not being able to stand up next to, you know, traditionally published books, and this one definitely did not fall into that category. I have read some that do. This one did not. If I got this at Barnes & Noble and read it, I would think it completely belonged there. I would not go, was this an indie book? At all. Which is a high praise for me. I don't know why it's high praise, it just is. Yes, I know indie books can be just as good as traditionally published. Don't come after me. You know what I mean by some books that just feel self-published. So those are all of my thoughts on Sculpt Yourself, and boy, there were a lot of them, but I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I hope that, Savvy, if you're watching this, you aren't too insulted by all of my critiques, and I really am interested to see where you go with this next, and hopefully you don't hate me now. Oh, you guys, I'm getting so sick of my outro. I need to figure out something else to do with it. Patreon, you can support me over there, or watch all of my current videos. Follow me on my social media. Patreon, it's where there are exclusive videos. I don't think I'm gonna stick with that one, but I think it works for this particular video. Yeah. You get the point.
Well, look at that. It's time for this month's patrons. This month we have Lennox, Amanda, Jenny, Jesper, Kim, Lisa, Ryakio, Sabby Panda, Sarah, Savvy, and Scribbling Cat. As usual, you guys, you rock my socks off. I'd also like to say a special welcome to Jesper, who is a new member to the Patreon family, and Jesper joined at the correct tier to be able to boss me around, so keep an eye out for a video coming out for them later on. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but it's coming, Jesper. It's coming. Thank you all again so much for your support.